Stay in your lane.
Welcome to the Mind Your Own podcast with Erin and Sausha Durkin, where we stick to sports, except when we're not.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mind Your Own podcast. I'm Erin.
I'm Sausha. Sorry. Yeah. I got a note like, hey, you're working too much. I'm like, yes, I'm aware. Thank you.
That's kind of the theme of where we're at right now. For many of you who are, weekly listeners of the podcast, you probably have noticed that we ended up taking a longer break than we intended. Yeah. That was not intentional. It just has been a very busy summer so far. Sasha's basically living at the College World Series.
I actually said last night to somebody that I know that works there, I was like, I just need a sleeping bag because it's better than having to drive all the way to, I basically live in Elkhorn. So it doesn't make sense to drive all the way to Elkhorn to then back downtown in between games. It just doesn't, especially when gas is like $5 a gallon.
That's how
I drive a truck.
That's how I feel sometimes with like Nebraska volleyball, football, when they go back to back, like Friday night, Saturday, or especially if it's a Saturday morning football game where I'm like, I just need to sleep in Lincoln because there's no point in me driving all the way back. But anyway, we will stop ignoring our guest. Actually, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I teased to Sausha. I was like, I have a guest idea in mind, and then didn't tell her about it for like 2 weeks, and then proceeded to forget to ask the potential guest for another week. So we somehow made it work, and we are joined by Austin I'm just about did it. Austin Panchot. I was telling him I'm so I psych myself out with names and I'm so worried, but we are so glad that you're here.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm happy to be here and happy it ended up working out.
Yes. Yeah. Thank goodness I somehow just barely butchered your name. I have to just say really quick, my last name is Sorensen, which is incredibly basic. And so many people say Sorensen, which is bizarre, but because of that, I'm so hyper aware of wanting to pronounce people's names correctly to the point where I think it's actually now become my greatest fear, where I will ask people, say your name to me, and it won't matter because then within 10 minutes, I'm my brain has told me it's pronounced differently. Well, Austin, we, like I said, are so glad that you're here. For people who are tuning in, Austin works with us at Hurrdat. So Hurrdat is the owner of Varsity. If you ever see Hurrdat Media or different things associated with Varsity, that is why we are all a part of one family. And Austin is on the Hurrdat side of things, but he also came to Hurrdat from Union Omaha.
That's right.
Which is very exciting. So it's just mostly for me as a Union Omaha fan. I just am selfishly let's have you on the podcast. But for anyone who's watching who also is a Union Omaha fan or a soccer fan, they may be familiar with you. So first and foremost, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for Hurrdat. Just give us the elevator pitch for Austin.
Yeah, the elevator pitch for Austin. We can start at Union Omaha. Had an awesome 2 years. That's what brought me to Nebraska, and played there for 2 seasons and couldn't have asked for a better way to go out with the championship. So that was part of how I knew it was my time to make that transition. That
is a good time to say I'm good.
Right. You go out on top, right? But awesome organization there and staff and teammates that I've met along the way. So super grateful for my time there and made the transition to Hurrdat, which is, like you said, a family with a lot of interesting pieces involved. And I knew it was a great fit, close enough to sports, but also I went to school at Indiana University for marketing and professional sales. So everything Hurrdat has going on was right up my alley. And I kind of knew right away that is where I wanted to make my transition out to.
Yeah, we have a lot of Nebraska, obviously, based listeners, which makes sense. This is a part of the Varsity Network, so a lot of you are Nebraska fans. So yes, Austin is a Hoosier. So there is a big connection there, a Big Ten connection there. What got you to Indiana? Because you grew up in St. Louis. So what made you pick Indiana?
Yeah. So they were always a powerhouse in soccer. So that was obviously very attractive to me. 4-hour drive. So close enough, far enough thing too.
I always forget that St. Louis is actually very close. Yeah. I have no concept of geography.
6 hours from Omaha if you drive to St. Louis. So close enough there too, which is also another great fit. And a lot of things really just matched up for me. The staff there. That's kind of a thing that I've always looked for too is the people first. Obviously sports, you want talented coaches, talented staff, talented teammates, but they, along with Hurrdat too, and Union Omaha, of course, they recruited people first, good individuals that worked well together, worked as a team, had their head on straight. So that's something I definitely look for as well. And testament to the staff at Indiana. They do an incredible job there. And that was, the campus sells itself too. It's an incredible experience. I've been obviously to Lincoln too, and they're both great.
Well, I've only been to Bloomington once, and I want to go back because I do remember it's very collegiate. It's very like old, big trees, like very collegiate. But like, I feel like I just haven't been there enough to really like know what to expect from the campus. But I do remember liking it. So I feel like I need to know when Nebraska plays at Indiana again, so that I know when I can like actually see, like spend more time on the campus. Yeah,
there's a lot to digest in one visit. And I mean, I've taken friends and obviously family there. It takes a few times to really understand, the different aspects of it. There's just a lot of beautiful spots on the campus, as well as, like you said, the big buildings. Limestone's the theme there. All the school buildings are made of limestone, and there's all the, the big fraternity Greek life houses and things like that too. But you also have that college town feel. Pretty cool little downtown. And I think there's similarities too to Blackstone, Farnham Street.
Okay.
There's a little version of that at Indiana. Definitely more, small town collegiate shops and local mom and pop shops, which is great. And more of a college town feel, but there's some similarities there a little bit.
See, I'm wondering almost because, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time looking this up right now. You all don't need to watch me like Googling everything. Nebraska plays Indiana in Lincoln this fall. So that makes me wonder if Nebraska is going to Indiana then next year, which would be exciting.
I want to go just like based off of Googling pictures of the campus, specifically in the fall.
Yes, fall is beautiful there. Yeah. It is definitely the time to go.
That's the thing. The Big Ten has a lot of really beautiful campuses. Yeah. Now, the Big Ten, for all of its beautiful campuses, also has some very not attractive campuses, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
Because you go from like, people always ask like, what are my favorite campuses? It's always the answer is the same for everyone. It's Madison, it's Columbus, it's the Wisconsin, Ohio State. I would say, I think Indiana, I just haven't been there enough to know. Nebraska hasn't played Indiana enough for me to know. But like, no offense to Northwestern, but Evanston isn't exactly like, but it's also like on the like north side of Chicago.
In my head, I was like, definitely not Evanston.
And it's not, it's just a different vibe. Yes. Everyone says the same thing about Rutgers, which I have not been to, but yeah, it is, the Big Ten is like, there's no kind of in between. It's either like you have a really beautiful campus or you kind of just have a campus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're saying all these places, I'm getting flashbacks in my head right now.
I'm sure. But not every Big Ten has a men's soccer team.
That's true. There's no Purdue soccer. So
no Nebraska.
No rivalry there. Yeah, no Nebraska. So missed out on some of those in-state rivalries with Purdue, of course. Notre Dame was kind of what made up for that and had some, they're not the Big Ten, of course. But
they might as well be.
Yeah, it was still fun. But yeah, I mean, all these places you guys were mentioning, Northwestern, I mean, it's a different experience too. And this is kind of, we can talk about being an athlete a little bit. You're just kind of cooped in a hotel for some of it, and then you're at the soccer stadium. So a little different. Northwestern's is right by the lake. It's turf. It's kind of what you would expect. I mean, if you go later in the season too, you got to be gritty there. It's winds whipping at you right off the lake.
See, I'm glad you brought that up because Northwestern did do that. They took advantage of Northwestern took advantage of having themselves right on the lake. And so they built all their facilities right there. Because that is the beautiful part of it. And so they were smart, but you kind of forget that everything is much colder off of a lake.
Yes.
So like, it's beautiful until you get to about November and you're like, oh my gosh, like, hold on a second. What are we doing here?
Yep.
I will say it's interesting that you said, I think a lot of times people misunderstand student athletes. Like you don't get to like fully experience these towns. And spoiler alert for everybody watching. I had an opportunity to interview Casey Thompson, one of Nebraska's quarterbacks that's fighting for the starting job this fall. And we were talking about Ireland. And I was like, are you excited to go? Because he's actually never traveled overseas before. So I was like, that's exciting. You must be excited. He's like, yeah, I mean, I am. However, he was like, it's going to be a lot of like bus, hotel, things that are basically scheduled for us. Like, he's like, I'm sure we'll get to see things. They'll do stuff, but it will be based on what they schedule for us. It's not going to be a lot of like us out getting to explore
or anything like that.
100%.
And that was like, I realized, and I know that I go travel, I see their setups and their situations. They don't want them out and about and wandering the towns. But yeah, I was kind of like, even going overseas, you're kind of limited as to what you're able to see because
you have a job to do.
You have a job to do.
Part of that job is at times putting your feet up in the hotel and doing whatever, resting that you need to do. Resting your mind, resting your body. So it's unfortunately you can't go sightseeing as much as you would like to, especially in Ireland. I know it's going to be amazing for them there too when they do get to see things. But they have a job to do at the end of the day.
I'm actually really glad you brought up the rest that's needed, because I think that a lot of people don't take that into consideration when they're talking about sports, talking to athletes, things like that. But that stuff is equally as important as all the work that you put in the gym, on the field. Can you give like your perspective on how important that has been or was in your career?
Yeah. I mean, it's not an on-off switch. It's always something all the time, whether it is that actively choosing to rest, actively choosing to eat the right things, going to your sleep schedules, incredibly important. I mean, there's such a difference in kind of your energy and routine is everything for athletes. I mean, obviously there's the, routines of maybe luck, things like that, but there's also routines of like, hey, you need to focus on this at this time. And it just improves the productivity. So there's so many different things that go into it. And that was also for me separately, like part of why I was like ready to transition out. I mean, it is just something, it consumes you, and it's because you have a love for the game. You have a passion for it. Yeah. So it's something that you don't turn off ever. And it's something that you have to put everything behind, because if you're not, you're not going to be your best. And if you're not your best at the higher levels you get, you're not going to be successful. So it's a big commitment, and it's something you got to always do.
I mean, I am not an athlete although I will say my favorite Peloton instructors always say, like, everyone is an athlete if you're, working and you're putting in the time and effort. So I appreciate that. Yeah. But I mean, I've never been, I didn't play collegiately. I obviously didn't play professionally, but it is like, I think sometimes there's just a misunderstanding with athletes, and this is in my job. I at least get to see a little bit of it. And I got to follow Adrian Martinez for a day. This was his spring heading into his sophomore season, and just watching their days. And like, he would wake up at 5:30 in the morning so he could get over to the stadium, so he could get his catapult tracker. It had to get synced up and all of this stuff. That takes time. Then you have to have breakfast. Then you're going to meetings. Then you have practice. And then when that's done, you technically have 5-6 hours that are yours, but you are filling that time with class, homework, things that you have to get done. And then you're right back into more meetings and back into dinner and back into conditioning, watching film. Yep. There's no everything. I kind of equated it to air traffic control. It feels like nothing can get off kilter in a day, because if it does, it changes everything else, but there's no free time.
Yeah. Because
then by the time, they get home at 8:39, whatever, there's not you're sitting down and doing something fun.
Right.
You're usually going to bed because you have to get up at 5:30 the next morning. So I can understand, I can't personally understand, but from watching that, I can understand that's a grind.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot going on. And especially student athletes, a whole different ballgame. I mean, professionally, I think you get a little bit more time. Obviously, you can dive into maybe analytics or the tech now. There's crazy stuff out there and all kinds of different ways to get an edge on your game. But student athletes in particular, it is very difficult to balance it all. But I think universities do an incredible job at providing the support needed, whether it's academic staff and advisors, things like that, or just the resources themselves, student centers, things like that. So they equip athletes, but it's still very difficult to do.
I was going to joke. I was going to be like, Whoop. Sponsor us.
Right.
But the amount of schools and professional athletes that are now using things like Whoop or the rings or different things so that they can just literally just track everything. Mm-hmm. Sleep.
I love the sleep analytics.
Oh my gosh. My sleep tells me that I'm an anxious person.
Right. I think that just the advances in technology, I'm sure, have just helped in leaps and bounds for teams, either professionally or collegiately, just more insight into your sleep habits. I didn't realize how important sleep hygiene was until I had one of those.
Oh,
it's insane.
The person who gives me such a hard time is Nebraska volleyball coach John Cook.
Yeah.
He thinks that and I know this because I actually did show my Whoop analytics to one of Nebraska's staff and was like, what do you think? And they're like, it seems like you don't shut your brain off at night. Like you fall asleep and you get a lot of good quality sleep, but your brain's not shutting off.
Yeah.
I was like, how do I fix that? And they're like, well, you need to put your phone down.
Yep. About
an hour before bed. You need to be meditating. You need to be doing breath work. And like, this is all stuff where I'm like, no, thank you. But I get it because I'm like, that's why my sleep sometimes, like I was looking at last night, like I clearly had stuff on my mind and I woke up this morning kind of feeling a little like groggy and gross. And obviously it's because I, was sitting on my phone and worrying myself before bed.
Right.
Anyway, Austin, I have to ask you, because you were talking about, knowing that you're ready to retire. When you made that decision, did you have a moment where you're like, what am I doing? Like, how was that whole process to like decide I'm done. I'm ready to walk into the next step of my life?
Yes, it was pretty unique. I actually knew probably 5 months or so before the season was ending. And I always knew it wasn't going to be forever. I think, and I was actively, taking steps just to network and prepare, knowing that I still had a couple of years left in me. This was like my first season, my rookie year, I actually didn't prepare at all for that.
You're like, I'm ready.
Year,
I'm already
I'm here.
Walking the door. Soccer. I'm out.
Yeah, but I think when I got to Omaha, actually, I realized, it's not going to be forever, and wasn't something I was going to do until I was 30 or things like that. Because anyway, but I was actively preparing a little bit and networking and things like that, knowing that I still wanted to keep playing, but wanted to be, have something kind of in line for when I moved. And I'd say 4 or 5 months before, I was like, okay, like I definitely think this might be my last year. So I came to terms with it pretty early, and it's still every day. I mean, I step on the field, I'm going to give it my all and always, do everything I can to win and help the team. And I'm just competitive too. I mean, I'll play ping pong over here and it's life or death. Like, but I kind of knew for a while, and I'll tell you a little story. I mean, it partially answers your question a little bit, but it was more the opposite, knowing that I'm happy. I've done it. It was the semifinals. I actually for the first time told some of my teammates the night before, because I kind of kept it pretty close to the vest. I didn't want to be a distraction, things like that. And I finally started telling my teammates, a couple of them that I was hanging out with, the night before game, just putting our feet up, watching, I don't know, maybe basketball or something. And I said, hey guys, like, I want to tell you, like, and this was before the semifinals actually. So I told them, and we won that game 5-1, I believe. And I scored a goal too. And that was like kind of the full circle moment. Like, wow, this is amazing. Like kind of a little internal send off. And those 3 guys too, we were typically all on the bench together more often than not, but we all got to play a bit too, of course. And they were the first 3 to the corner to celebrate with me. And that was a special moment for me. So I loved that, and never forget that moment with those guys. And that was like, some people may be like, wow, like you just scored. Like, are you sure? Like, 'cause some of them asked me. I was like, I've been sure for a while, and this is just icing on the cake for me. So it wasn't like a thing where I was like, oh, I don't know, I'm second guessing. And when I did finish too, I had a month and a half. I think I didn't even touch a soccer ball, and it was a relief for me. I mean, it was a lot of that stress all gone. And soccer has been and always will be a huge part of my life. I'm still glued to the screen every weekend with Premier League, or and there's all kinds of leagues around the world now too, and it's something I'll always actively be doing. I coach once a week now too. I kind of picked that back up again, but it was nice to just decompress, be done, and I was very content with it. But that was my kind of moment where I was like, this was incredible. And I knew I was ready to move on, and then winning the trophy the next game, it was unbelievable. So
I mean, you really can't go out any better than winning. Like that is like the dream is I'm going to win
on top
a championship and then move on, because you will always have had that final.
Yes.
That was incredible. Like, could you believe that like, could you not like, could you believe? I think every team knows that like it's possible. Like you can, but like when you won that, did you have a moment of like, how the heck did we do this? Because I think like that, I mean, second season of Union Omaha and you're now champions.
Yeah, it's incredible when you take a step back. But every single day, the group we had, we knew we had it in us. I mean, the year before that, we were runners up, and the final got canceled. So we knew we always knew it was possible. And more so the second season, it was more the mindset that like, we deserve this. This is ours. So it was never like surprised to be there. It was almost like, if we don't win this, we messed up, because we know we had the talent. We know we had it in our locker. The group we had was incredible. And it's also incredible to see Union Omaha still having success, because there was a lot of turnover. Just because, people move up, people move laterally, people go to Hurrdat.
People come and they get full-time jobs.
So, I mean, there's a lot of that. And being in a kind of like baseball AAA type league, I mean, there's a lot of turnover. There's a lot of like I said, upward and lateral movement. So we knew we had it in our locker to win, and we knew we had the talent, and we executed, which was great.
I have to say really quick, I do have a Union Omaha jersey. I bought a game worn jersey, and the player it was for technically had moved on after the first season, but it's Connor Doyle's number. So I just started wearing it for him. I was like, so when he returned, when he made he was going to come back this season, I was like, my poor husband was like, you've just decided, like, I like to, like, when I have a favorite team, I'll just be like, this is my player. And so Connor became that player. And so I have this jersey. Like I said, it has somebody else's name on the back, but it's his number. And so I'm just like, this is for him. Yeah. So when he came back, I was like, yes. But I feel like he's also somebody where I'm like, he has to feel a sense of accomplishment, like for what he's done. And like, especially when you look at the trajectory of his career. So you look at a lot of these players on this roster, and like, you've all had very interesting walks to get paths to get to Union Omaha. So like, that to me is really cool, because it is a very, like, to have a group that has come from all different, different countries that come together and can then put together a championship. Like, that has to be really cool to think, like, look at what you're capable when you bring people together.
And the other facet of that is inaugural season, right? Like, Union Omaha didn't exist. We were all the first players ever on the team in the organization. So being able to be a part of that is really special. And that's something I didn't realize until obviously we did it, right? Like, everywhere else, it's like, oh, this team's been here forever, but it's pretty special to be a part of something from the ground up, and then to have the success that we did for 2 years. Because year 1 to year 2, we kept majority of the team, and a great core, which was awesome. And then those guys, obviously, we got rewarded with the trophy. And we had guys that left after the first year too that were just great people, and we're happy to be with them too. But it was special to be a part of that, and like I said, from the ground up, it's something that always going to cherish. And and capping it with the trophy, it's incredible.
I do want to dive into Union Omaha, but before we do, I want to ask you a couple more questions about your transition out of, being an athlete. Not that you're not, I think you're forever an athlete. I don't want to imply that you suddenly aren't, but what was that transition like when you started, waking up and going to a quote unquote 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job, and like life suddenly looked very different than it had, a couple of months prior?
Yeah, it did. We were still, it's somewhat similar to starting the day. I think the biggest transition is just somewhat longer days and just a different type of grind. And it wasn't right away. I think we even were working remote for a little bit too. So I was still like working from home was a little different too. So I kind of eased my way into it. I also worked part-time a little bit for that last maybe month and a half of the season. So got my feet wet a little bit there, but yeah, it's a different transition for sure. And just your schedule changes, of course, and your job isn't working out now. And that's something that I always want to continue to do and do. So like finding time for that, things like that. It's definitely a different, ball game, of course.
Yeah.
But I think the transition went pretty well for me because I got to ease into it a little bit. And obviously the staff here are great people, and they're super helpful. I've learned an incredible amount since I've started here back in November. And that's made it all easier. Definitely being in a great place helps.
I think like the one thing that I think sometimes it is hard though. Like, what advice could you offer? So if, a student athlete or a professional athlete stumbles upon this podcast and listens to it, because I think that sometimes there's a lot of fear of like what life looks like. Who am I without this thing? And then you see a lot of people, like I think of you, or I think of Alex Henry when he transitioned from the NFL, and now he works for an engineering company here in Omaha, I believe, or an architecture. I can't remember exactly what he works for, but you transition out of these things. And I think sometimes there's a fear for those who haven't done it yet, that they're losing their identity. They're losing the thing that they have been for so long. What advice do you offer somebody who's feeling like, when this day comes and I'm done, I'm going to lose my sense of self, who I am?
Yeah. Super great question. And I don't have all the answers. It's an ongoing process a little bit. But I think in the beginning, I definitely put my head down and started right away. I think I was speaking with the general manager, in Omaha. We sit down and catch up every once in a while, and he played professionally himself, and he was shocked when I was like, I already going full time. And I think it was like, maybe a couple of weeks after the season ended. I think Thanksgiving break, I took a little break and got right into it. And he was like, wow, like I did not go that quickly. Took him a long time, and he was super shocked and like maybe a little bit impressed too, but it's just something that I kind of was able to put my head down and jump right into the next thing. And I think the competitive drive, I mean, you can use that in different ways. I mean, it's not only in sports, it's in anything that you do, whether it's, in a marketing industry and an engineering industry. So I would say finding something that you're passionate or have a background in that you can make that next step to. And I think I was speaking about it earlier. I didn't make this transition very quickly. Technically, it arose from 1.5 2 years of just networking and meeting the right people and just preparing a little bit in advance. So I would say just don't rush into anything, and actively, look or just plan and know that maybe the time's in a year, maybe the time's in 3 years. I would say just get a little head start on it so you land in a place on your feet. And like, for example, Hurrdat, I mean, there's a sports background.
Yeah.
Right,
I'm sitting on a podcast with you right now and talking about,
Sports.
Transition and things like that,
Sports.
but also life. I mean, because sports, there's obviously sports is ball is life, right?
Ball is life.
But yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did there have to be like kind of a little bit of a mindset shift for you in order to get to that point? Like when you ultimately had kind of made up your mind and started preparing for that, like how did your mindset shift in order to continue to keep preparing for that? Because I think that might be one of the hardest parts of accepting the fact that that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, I think my mindset, and it was a process of over time, but transition to the long term. I mean, so often in sports, it's one day at a time. It's how can I get better today? How can I train better today? How can I improve the skill for the next game? How can I make my next game be better than my last? And I think for me, I was looking at long term and in a whole different career path and things like that, and considering how can I put myself in a position to get here in 5 years or here in 10 years. And that's something I started to think about more as opposed to my rookie year when it was just one day at a time. How can I be the best player in practice today? How can I start this game? How can I achieve this benchmark? So I think a longer term mindset helped me a little bit. And some of these questions, I mean, you guys are asking me, I haven't thought about internally enough, maybe. Because like I said, I jumped right into things and put my head down and was on to the next journey. So these are great questions. I'm appreciating them.
All I want to do now, though, is watch Ted Lasso after you said ball is life. Like my brain has just been like, Ted Lasso, that show is so
the new season coming out soon.
I know. Okay, here's a question, because you obviously watched Ted Lasso. Yes. What were your thoughts on the Christmas episode? Did you like it or not? Oh,
man, I feel like it's forever ago since I watched it. I'd have to get a little refresher, honestly. It's not sticking out to me.
Do you watch Ted Lasso?
No, it's on HBO, right? No,
Apple TV.
Apple TV.
Yeah, that's why.
I'm curious for those watching. I have a feeling we have one listener that Sky, I'm sure, watches Ted Lasso. Yeah. The reason I'm asking about the Christmas episode is because nothing really happened in it. They just like basically celebrated Christmas and like had dinner. I'm not giving spoilers away, by the way. Like literally, like there's nothing to spoil about this episode.
Called the Christmas episode.
It's literally, and I found it's like a polarizing topic where people either feel very strongly that they did not like the episode because nothing happened, or they feel very strongly that they liked the episode because it was just very Ted
warm,
Lasso.
fuzzy.
It was just warm and fuzzy, and like nothing happened besides just like everyone felt good.
I do kind of recall now.
They sang Christmas carols,
and everybody brought their
yes.
Okay, yes, I do remember, and I think it's telling that I had no recollection of it. So it's nothing that you're
not on the fence of hate.
Yeah, I'm not. I just wasn't memorable as some of the other episodes. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I was thinking about other things.
Yeah. I'm just curious. So for anyone who's watching, if you have a strong opinion about the Christmas episode, I'd love to hear it, because I have found that it's just a very polarizing, outside of like everything else with every season of Ted Lasso now. That's the hard part with any show, because it had such groundbreaking success its first season that I think the expectations were so high that people, when you get the next one, are like, it can't possibly top. But I always say, like, think of like all of your favorite television shows, like The Office, or you could rattle off a ton. Yeah. There's usually like some that see success in their second season, but sometimes after a really successful first season, it takes them a minute to like get back into it. Now, the difference is I think people actually, that I say in The Office, people think people had the reverse, where they felt the first season sucked, the second season was better. So anyway, but my point is like, I'm very hopeful for the next season of, I think the writers and the team are so great that they had to kind of establish some things to keep building so that we can anyway, this isn't a Ted Lasso podcast.
Random other show that's like that very much. The Boys. I don't know if you guys watch that. It's brutal. It's very violent, but it's like basically it's superheroes, but they're bad people for the most part. But like that, like started off running and then just has built and built and built, and it's like, how are they going to top this? But somehow they do.
Yeah, and I'm putting a pin in two things right now. Stranger Things, they're just incredible all the way through.
Yep.
And that's all I'll say about that.
Is it July 1st yet?
That's that as well. And then Breaking Bad, they had an episode so very polarizing for me, the Fly episode, like the tsetse fly or whatever, just a waste of 45 minutes or however long the episode was. It was something I'm like, and I stand by this too. I think Breaking Bad, incredible show, but I think their episodes were like an hour or 50 minutes. I think if they made them 35 minutes, 40 minutes, because I think there were just scenes that would drag out, and it's just like, okay, we kind of know what's going on here. Why is it taking so long? Right. And that's how I remember it. I haven't watched it in a long time, but that episode in particular, it was something that frustrated me.
Yeah. See, I did tell Austin that we go on tangents. Yes. So really quick, this is my side tangent before we talk about Union Omaha, because I just want to say I need to get this off my chest. We're talking about television shows, and Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus has been making my life. Okay, I love Star Wars. I've never seen a full Star Wars movie.
It's
just fine.
Full disclosure.
Everyone
can come for me on Twitter. It's fine.
Look, I'm not like going to like Comic-Con or whatever for it, but like if you do, like that's amazing. That's cool. I'm just saying that's not like I'm not that super fan. I just really enjoy them is what I'm saying. Like I love this whole like. But the reason I'm saying that is because when you talk about a perfectly timed show, every episode is about 45, 50 minutes. They fly by to the degree where you get to the end and you're like, has it been that? Like, but they've timed them so well where like, it just like doesn't feel like there's anything that's dragging out about them. We watched because they dropped the first 2 episodes on one Wednesday. And when we watched them, that time frame just flew.
You're like, what?
And I think that's when you can figure out the perfect amount of time for a show where it just like
it also leaves you like eager for more.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Versus like that Breaking Bad episode, you're like,
I was like, I didn't probably watch for a week.
Right. I'm just gonna take a break.
Yeah. But so like that's for me, the last episode of this little 6 miniseries comes out the day that this episode will be released. And like, I'm so looking forward to it. But like the way that they've crafted it is I'm almost actually like, I don't want to watch it because I'm sad that it's going to be over. Right. But they've just done a really good job of like how they build the episodes. So I understand what you're saying, where it's like when you have a really like well-constructed episode and the time just flies by. I would say like Ozark did that too, but Ozark also got kind of
Jason Bateman, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I love him.
Just that's a show I will say, if your mental health is in a dark place, do not start Ozark. That is a show where I realized like my mental health was being directly affected by it. So I had to like, I
might need it after this week.
Yeah. My husband was like, let's keep watching. And I'm like, I'm just not in a good mental health space. Like my mental health right now is not great. I can't watch this because I'm going to just be in a very dark state of mind.
It's heavy. It's
a heavy show. And he goes, but you've watched Breaking Bad and you've watched, Better Call Saul. Breaking Bad, I would say, was also very dark, but they also had a lot of like, Jesse was a very humorous character. There was a lot more like kind of just like funny moments in it. Ozark doesn't have a ton of like comedic relief. Like episodes are just heavy. And you're like, you get to the end and you're like, I need to go take a walk around the block. Like,
you need a moment.
Yeah, I think that was one I didn't continue on to. I don't know what season, what episode. Somewhere I got lost and just didn't really pick it back up. But there was definitely a strand of. I mean, it's very captivating, heavy, engaging.
Yes.
It gets your attention. But yeah, it's a lot, and I think maybe I took a break. I don't know. I took a break.
You can get yourself lost in it, almost in like a bad way. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. If you haven't watched
maybe Ozark, I won't watch that after this week.
Maybe don't. Tonight. Maybe watch like Schitt's Creek or something. Like because I feel like after I've had like
a zone out.
Yeah, there's certain shows where I'm like, if I just need my brain to shut off, I watch like Schitt's Creek,
Office.
Gilmore Girls, The Office, because I've already seen them enough times where there is no like energy being shared with the show. I am just like,
you already automatically know when to laugh.
Yes. I don't even have to like put any effort in. Well, speaking of great things, let's talk about Union Omaha, because Union Omaha, but when you are listening to this, they may have already played or they're getting ready to play Sporting KC. This is a big deal because I currently have an article pulled up on ussoccer.com, and I loved the headline, Union Omaha and the Improbable Dream. And this is the subhead. Members of 3rd Division Union Omaha, who took down 2 MLS teams so far and hope for more of the same in Kansas City and in a historic quarterfinal, see no reason why they cannot go all the way. What is Union Omaha doing right now?
They are doing Union Omaha things. They are incredible. It's been an amazing run so far, and that's just like you said. I mean, they don't see any reason why they can't keep winning. And it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. I mean, confidence is everything in soccer, and I mean, they know that they can compete with anyone. And at the end of the day, you play the game because you don't know what's going to happen. And no one would have predicted Union Omaha getting as far as they did. None of these MLS teams or anybody really, probably. And it's a testament to their character, their drive, organization from the staff, from the team. It's something that's super impressive, an exciting run to watch. And I think there couldn't have been a better way to do it than going to Kansas City now too. It's super exciting. And I know we were talking before the podcast about how we played Kansas City, their 2 team, about a year ago in preseason. And it's kind of cool to see it all come full circle.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording that Tom Chattel of the Omaha World-Herald actually spoke with the owner of Union Omaha, Gary, about just kind of the path of Union Omaha's existence. And originally, before Union Omaha ever became a thing, there was talk about a team being placed in Omaha that would be the feeder team to Sporting KC. Ultimately, it fell apart because there was, a lot of like, do you put players on the road between Kansas City and Omaha that often? For that reason fell apart. As you said, Sporting KC 2 ended up becoming a thing, so that they took care of that. But then Union Omaha comes along, and Union Omaha gets to stand on its own. And like they were saying, Union Omaha probably wouldn't have gotten to do everything that it's doing now and exist in the way that it exists if it had been tied to Sporting KC in the way that feeder team would have been if they went that path.
Yes, it's very interesting because in the league, Union Omaha's in, as well as across the USL, there's a lot of feeder teams. And at the end of the day, their purpose is to serve the first team. Obviously, everyone, you step on the field, you want to win. Coaches want to win. But, I mean, you have youth academy products that you want to get experience, and you have veterans that are coming down, maybe coming off of injury, and they want to ease into it in the second division, things like that. And so it's never the main goal. And Union Omaha is special because at the end of the day, Union Omaha is Union Omaha. They want to win for Union Omaha, for Omaha, for the fans. And that's something that is incredible. I think that being in that position, it elevates you mentally. I think there's something that you have a chip on your shoulder. You want to perform for the team, and you get guys that at other places, I mean, more often than not, there's not guys like this, but you're like, oh, I just want to do well for myself. I want to get up to the first team, things like that. It's a different mentality. And when you're competing against MLS teams, in this case for Union Omaha, it's something that you want to prove yourself. You want to perform for Union Omaha, and you want to show people that Union Omaha are a great team.
I mean, and they have, because this whole article that's on ussoccer.com, which I recommend checking out, just Google Union Omaha US Soccer and it'll pop up. But I think, they're talking about just like what Union Omaha has been able to do and how they've become kind of like the darling of the Opens Cup. And we were talking also before we got started about like just what, in my opinion, what this can do for, the growth of soccer in the United States, but also specifically in Nebraska. Because how many little kids are watching this, both little boys and little girls, and who are going like, now what I'm seeing is not just on a national stage, it's localized, and I can go chase my dreams and potentially play for a team like Union Omaha. Like, this might now be the dream of some of these little kids.
100%. Yeah. And it's special. I know St. Louis, where I grew up in my hometown, their pro team when they finally emerged there with St. Louis FC. And now it's, the MLS team's coming and it's totally different. But at the time I'm speaking of, it was a USL team, kind of like Union Omaha. And that was a massive deal because there's an entire youth club built underneath, and the youth clubs in Omaha, Nebraska, they're just getting better and bigger too, more organized. And it's having that focal point at the top. It grows roots and it drives growth across all the different levels. And that's something that's just going to progress the game. And it's not just in Omaha, it's in all places across the country, but Omaha specifically, it's very exciting for that next generation and the youth to have that to look up to go to the games. I mean, it's special. And this is kind of a little bit of a tangent too, but the amount of kids we get to just make their days at games. And, they're wanting autographs on their jerseys. They're signing. They're like, oh, can we have your cleats? I'm like, no, sorry, but no. I wish I could. Not quite at that level, but things like that. I mean, they have such an amazing time at the games, and it's always been something in college too. I mean, it's part of why so many of us love playing too. I mean, we get to make kids' days like regularly at game days, and it's a special experience that Union Omaha puts on for the fans too, and that's something that's really fun.
I'm really glad to see soccer continue to grow in the United States. And I would say there's a few different facets of this that are all playing into this. And I think the success of USL and teams like Union Omaha, I think the success of what we're seeing from the national women's soccer team who's fighting for equal pay and fighting for this to be on the same, like to get the same things as the men's side. I think all of these pieces play into a more fair and equitable sport. And I think that is, for me, exciting because then we're now seeing soccer grow in all of these different ways that we didn't see 10 years ago even. It's definitely, I feel like in the last few years with the growth, like I said, of USL and all of these other leagues trying to come along, like we were talking about, MLS wants to keep getting their hands in the game. But even just like I said, with the women's team and what they're doing on a national level of like fighting for it, I think this is like, if you're a soccer fan or if you want to play soccer, like this is an amazing growth to see like what could be possible 10 years from now.
Oh, I cannot wait to see it all unfold. And speaking specifically about the women's game, my rookie year was in North Carolina FC, and the NC Courage. They had, and they are an incredible team. They had, I want to say 5 or 6 U.S. women's national team players on that squad, as well as Brazilian national team star, you name it, all kinds of different countries. They won multiple trophies already in their short existence. I think they're like 5 years into their time in North Carolina. But seeing that was incredible. They rocked the park out there. I mean, that's probably the pinnacle of club women's soccer across the world, because they would have PSG and other teams come and play in an international cup tournament too, which is somewhat, I guess, probably like Champions League for women's side. And it was incredible to watch that. And the amount of fans and the passion there for the women's team was something incredible. I think the stadium held like 9,000, 8,000. We never got close to that on the men's side. The women's team was packing it out. And I think I remember going home back to St. Louis after the season, and there was a mural in the mall of Crystal Dunn, I believe. She's incredible. Superstar, women's national team, all the benchmarks and everything, you name it, she's got it. And I saw a mural in the mall and I was like, this is incredible. Like I was just like living in the same apartment with these people. Like this is something pretty amazing to see. And it goes back to just the testament to how much the game is growing, men's side, women's side. And I think it's going to be really special in the United States 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And who knows? I mean, I think we're on the right trajectory to being powerhouse on men's and women's side. Obviously women's, they're already there, but for years and years to come, because the growth of the game in the United States is at an exponential level right now.
I was just looking this up too. One of the things that I just recently hosted a show that's going to air, depending on when you listen to this, just go look up Nebraska Public Media /Title9 and .org, NebraskaPublicMedia.com.org/Title9. What is it? My brain.org. I knew it's government. It's like educational. Yeah. Anyway, we could go on a tangent of that and like URLs, doesn't matter. Yeah. But when we were talking about how you grow the game for women, how you grow like any sport for women, but like also just growing sports in general. The one thing that like Gary, for instance, and what he did by investing in Union Omaha and creating that opportunity, I tell people, like, if you're able to invest in something, do it. I understand Brittany Mahomes is people have opinions on her in Kansas City. I don't really care. At the end of the day, her and Patrick invested in the Kansas City Current and have put it's the put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to say we want to grow something, do it. If you have that, if you're a fan showing up for these things, that's a big part of it, is showing up, being present, buying tickets, watching on TV, tweeting about them that you want to see these things on TV. The more noise you make, the more you engage, the more you like. I think soccer is a sport that, like, I'm so glad to see it growing in the United States, because it's such a great game.
Yeah.
It's the world's game.
It's the world's game. And like, I mean, just, you saw Kansas City, how they lost their mind that they're getting to host.
Yeah.
In what, 2020?
Omaha lost their mind that Kansas City's getting to host.
I know. I was like, sweet. It's so close.
It's unbelievable.
But like, that's the stuff where it's like, we talk a lot about like what Omaha does, where Omaha gets excited for anything that comes to Omaha.
Yes.
You have curling, everyone shows up for it. You have the swim trials, which everyone showed up for, which, you know, RIP. That makes me sad that it's leaving. But anyway, like, Omaha will travel for that. But I think like building this excitement, and sorry, I'm kind of like in 5 different places, but I have a point here. So part of that Title IX show that I hosted, I was listening to a group of volleyball coaches here in the state talk about growing volleyball. And they talk about how one of the aspects of growing volleyball in the United States is also growing the men's side of the game.
Yep.
And how it's not just anymore about like just growing one without the other. It's let's build everything together and give opportunities, because men's volleyball is very popular in Europe, but it's not quite as popular in the United States. So how do you build that game? Because when you build the men's side, you actually strengthen the women. Same thing with soccer. You build both together. You just make a better game for all. Yeah. And that's the thing where I'm like, I'm so grateful for people like Gary who've invested in soccer, but we have to keep finding people who want to invest in the game and invest in the athletes and the players and the experience and everything else, because that's what's going to change it. That's what's going to make it a bigger deal in the United States. And it is, like, honestly, in the last 10 years, I think it's grown, but like, what can we do in the next 10?
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
So I'm really excited to see what does happen in the next 10 years, because I think that, I mean, when I was growing up, soccer was like popular when you were younger, but then as you got older, it wasn't, especially like in the Midwest, wasn't nearly as popular. But now, because of teams like Union Omaha, because of everything that's kind of changed and the trajectory that's changed, I think that you're seeing a lot more kids, like you said. I mean, the kids are coming out to the games and are like just in awe, because this is incredible to them, right? But being able to see that and then representation on both sides, whether that be a team like Union Omaha or whether that be a women's team, and building both of those things up, like, I'm really excited just to see how I think it's going to explode. Yeah. Like, I think it's already exploding, but it's like the tiny little fire that starts the explosion.
And it's going to be a big one. And I think World Cup here is going to be just gasoline on the fire. It's going to be unbelievable. I can't wait. But going back, I wanted to mention, like you said, every single kid, everyone played soccer, no matter what. Everyone played soccer. It just, was it for 20 days when you were 4 years old? Was it, up until 8? Like, that was just, I feel like you roll the ball, parents have their kids play soccer, but there is a gap. And like you were just saying, I mean, when you get older, it's not quite as big. And I know, like, for example, myself and like different high schools, it's not as big of a thing. It's always football, basketball. I know. And so it's interesting to me, as as people are getting older, how can we get people to, like, not just stop after 6 years old or 8 years old? And I think that's happening. It's happening now. It's happening fast. And all these different teams popping up. It's playing a big part of it. People going to, like you said, Union Omaha games, things like that. And then when this World Cup comes, people are going to see how big of a deal it is. All the traveling fans, from every different country, all the different cultures involved. They're going to understand a little bit more about, it's not just a soccer game on a Saturday. It's these people's lives. Everything about it. It's for their country, the passion behind it. I mean, it's something special. I would say, I mean, it's like Husker Nation, right? Like, it is passion. It is passion. And I would say it's more overseas for a soccer team in let's say Spain, Barcelona. Like, they live, breathe, and die it. Obviously Huskers do too, but in the stadium atmospheres are something that there's nothing quite like it. And part of that's just the way people enjoy games, and but over there it's like, you don't have a choice. You're screaming your lungs off for 90 minutes. You have synchronized chants. You are there's so many nuances of fandom over there and just passion around it. It's incredible. And having that come to the United States is only going to just continue to kind of unlock people's understanding of the game, and that it's the world's game, and that it can be for any little boy or girl, and they can have their dream to play for Union Omaha or to play for other teams that are popping up. So
yeah,
I will say, like, I went to Germany, and I'd have to look up I think it was right after it would have been right after the 2002 World Cup. But I remember being in Germany, and they had a pair of cleats. They had a pair of Nike cleats that were like the World Cup cleats that the German team had played with and had worn and were in store. And it was a big deal. And I remember, like, as somebody, I'm in high school at the time, as somebody who was like, I don't play soccer. I've really never played soccer, but like understood that, like, that was what I bought as like my souvenir from Germany, was like a pair of cleats, soccer cleats, and brought them home. And people were like, well, how are you going to wear these? Because they legitimately have cleats on the bottom. And I'm like, I'm not, I guess, but they're just going to like exist in my life. Yeah. But like, that was the thing that, like, I didn't quite understand what soccer meant, but I understood when I was there, like, the big deal of like, oh, this would be like the equivalent of like owning a pair of Jordans that like everyone's really up in arms about, or LeBron puts out a pair of shoes, or Allen Iverson, whatever. Yeah. Like, that was the equivalent of it. And I remember bringing these home and just being like, now what? But like, that's the thing that, like, I think we'll continue to see, is this like want to buy merch and but like you said, they'll see it in Kansas City when you're like, oh, this isn't just a game. It is a big, big deal.
Yeah. And I want to back the truck up. You said game worn cleats by the German team.
No, they were, I wish that would have been amazing.
How much money did you spend?
Yeah, no, I remember we just went into like a Nike store, and they had the replica one, the versions of like what they wore. Still
very cool though.
But
amazing souvenir, because you said it was when the World Cup was in Germany.
No. It would have been, so I just was looking it up. It was 2002. So let's see, that would have been in South Korea. And I can't remember how well the German team did, but like like at the same time, it was like, did it matter?
Yeah.
They were there.
In Germany and the World Cup's going on. You're going to know about it.
Yeah. So yeah, it was in South Korea, in Japan. And it looks like, how far did they get? Let's see.
2002. I'm sure they had a great team. Bastian Schweinsteiger breaking through the ranks, and I don't know, a little early for me in my knowledge, but I know enough that Michael Ballack, I'm sure, was doing great things.
Let's see. So they played a playoff game, and so maybe it wasn't so it would have been every 4, because the World Cup's every 4 years. Yep. I'm gonna have to do. I don't like my like dates don't make any sense in my head, because they actually didn't qualify for the World Cup in this one, but maybe it was. Am I all off on my like?
Could be something else in there too. Yeah. There's a lot of different international friendlies, tournaments, things like that.
Anyway, maybe it was.
Put a pin on this one.
It doesn't matter. No one. But regardless, I do remember like that was the big deal. Is like you'd walk in and like there was just like
all kinds of memorabilia,
and
soccer
like
balls, cleats, socks. You name it.
Yeah, and so I mean, I believe they're still at my mom's house, so I'll have to like. I mean, I never gave them away, so
if you bring them in here, I'd love.
I'll bring them and I'll have you look at them, because like I do remember the two things about them is they were soccer cleats and they were somehow associated with the World Cup. And I also remember like I came home and like bought a CD, because at the time there wasn't Spotify. I bought like the World Cup CD that like was like the theme songs and stuff.
And that's part of the culture too, right? There's entire songs. I mean,
Shakira,
look at what she did. And
that song is incredible, by the way.
And it's the whole world's listening to it. The whole world's loving it. It is a theme song, and it goes with what I was kind of speaking about earlier, soccer and the culture behind it. Every single country getting involved, the food, the music, the dancing. There's so much behind the scenes that people get to enjoy and embrace. And being the world's game, you bring all those cultures together. And I mean, the small example for me is just all the different teammates I had.
Yeah.
Union Omaha, North Carolina FC. I mean, people from all across the world, El Salvador, Ghana, Argentina, Canada, so many different places. And it's special for me. And I'm always going to be grateful for that experience with 3 years playing pro, that I got to meet people all over the world, understand more about them and their journeys, and learned a lot of great things too. I mean, different food, drinks, things like that. I mean, yerba mate. I don't know if you're familiar with that. You can check that out. But every soccer player in Argentina and all these different countries, they always have their tea. And it's kind of their coffee. And it's a huge soccer thing too. But it's just like, I think there was a coffee shop in Kansas City I was there recently, and it had that tea and people from there, and they have a book even. And I know my girlfriend was like, oh yeah, I know about this and that and that tea because of my roommate was from Argentina, and it never didn't have it in his hand. and they have a book in there that talks about, the origin of it. And I think the staff said, oh yeah, no, that's a religion. Like yerba mate is a religion, the tea, and it's something that I never would have known about otherwise. And it's pretty interesting stuff. So
I love that. I think for me, I'm like, that's kind of where I want to end, because I think you said it so well that like soccer is the world's game. And I think obviously it builds bridges. It brings people together. You learn so much about other people and other cultures. And like, even for people who are just here based in Nebraska, if you haven't checked out Union Omaha, or if you have, but you haven't gotten back to a game, please do so, because these are incredible people from all over the world who hopefully, knock on wood, doesn't matter. Whatever happens against Sporting KC, this Union Omaha team has done. They're one of 8 left. So, I mean, incredible. They started with, I was reading, which, by the way, this could not happen to a better person than Jay Mims.
I was going to ask about him. I'm like kind of bummed we're ending.
No, it's fine. Do you want to tell us? Because, I mean,
I want to, just his career in general, but then I've had the opportunity a couple times to book him on a few different shows. He's just like an incredible dude, but like from a player's perspective, like how great of a coach is Jay?
Yeah, it's something that is very, so the hardest working coach, he will put in any amount of hours, whether it's soccer, tactics, film, as well as even just looking out for well-being of players, and making sure that's right. So when you have a coach that works that hard, and does the little things and prepares unlike anyone else, it translates. And I think I would say too, another big piece of him, and it all adds up to coaching, is recruiting the people first. That's huge for him. And that is something that makes the team better. And I think him doing that is a huge part of the success, obviously, that Union Omaha's had in 2.5 years already, which is incredible for being an inaugural season.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
I got to interview him once, and I interviewed him when the big announcement of Union Omaha happened, and they brought everyone out to Werner Park. And what struck me about him is when I was asking him about just bringing a team like this to Omaha, what it would mean, his focus turned so quickly on what it means, not just for the community, but for, like we were talking about, the little kids that are going to be watching. And he was talking about how he hoped it continued to grow the game. Like, even when he was talking about like Nebraska soccer with the women's team, and he's like, I want this to be something that can help build them up and build up the teams at UNO and everything else. And like, and that was kind of amazing to me, that it's like, here's this day that he could be celebrating for himself, getting this job, having this big celebration about the team. And he's instead focusing all of the attention outward. That was what stood out to me in that moment, was like, he was so focused on how this could help others versus anything to do with himself.
Yeah, and that's I think a testament to his character, and then his passion behind and his Omaha roots, and I mean, he's worked his way up from college teams, and he's been there, and he's passionate about every single team, and I think he'll remember every single play for 10 years ago, anything. He is very immersed in it all, and I think that is incredible for Omaha. And his passion behind that is something that drives the trajectory and the success of Union Omaha.
I just have to point out, when I'm reading this story on US Soccer's website, that COVID break is always going to like really mess with things, because it said the 109-year-old competition, but it's currently in its 107th edition, because obviously the years that it had to be taken off. But like, I'm just throwing out there that like, this is always going to mess with my mind, how like things are off by like a couple of years now, because it's like,
yeah, and then I'm hearing that, I'm like, man, we would have had a run too. We had an incredible team last year, and then the year before that too, and it would have been, we were relishing the opportunity, and then very bummed when it did get canceled, because we were excited, just like Union Omaha is right now, for every new challenge and to face all these teams. So it's great to see them continuing that success and making a run.
I will leave from the US Soccer article the last paragraph. So the question remains, is it possible? Will the gods allow it? Which I love that just like the football gods, the soccer gods exist. We'll all have to wait and see. There's 90 minutes, maybe 120, and maybe a shootout between all the possibilities and a place in the semifinals and the verge of more history.
Yeah, that's special.
It's pretty cool. Like I said, depending on when you're listening to this, you may or may not know the outcome of what happens. But I think, if nothing else, Union Omaha has done everything to deserve the respect and people to show up. I will say, this is wild to me. You can get seats on the pitch. Like you can get seats like right down there for like $50. Now, if you don't want to spend $50 a seat, you can get them just sitting anywhere in the stadium for like $10 a seat. But I'm just saying, it's so reasonably priced. There's no reason not to go. Like, find a game, get yourself there.
Have a good time.
Have a good time. Get some hoot juice.
Yep.
That stuff is deadly in a good way, but be careful. You can see the new owl.
Yeah, that is a new development. That is a fun one.
Who did not truck a kid at the College World Series? Which, did you see that?
I did not. I'll have to look into the story.
I'm going to have to show you.
Yeah.
Did you see that? You were there.
Well, I was there, but I'm working the entire time. No, I didn't see that.
Okay, last little side note before we let you all go. Please go watch the video. It's circulating everywhere on Twitter. I'm going to show you after we're done recording.
Sounds great.
I feel so bad for Durango, UNO's mascot. So they did a Nebraska mascot race, but it was only Omaha mascots. So it was Durango from UNO, the Creighton Blue Jay, the woman mascots from the Storm Chasers. What is her name?
Something Nina.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
And then the new owl from Union Omaha. The Union Omaha owl was like back of the pack. Now, to be fair, that owl is also the largest costume. I will say Durango and the Creighton Blue Jay both are in like athletic. So what happened is they take this corner, and to be fair, the kid was not sticking in their lane. The kid is like zigzagging. So the kid sees an opening and is like, I'm going for it. Cuts over, but you have to remember, like, mascots can't see, so the mascot can just see what's going on. The kid basically cuts over, and the Durango's arm just like smokes the kid. The kid goes like flipping and tumbling, just completely eats it, and then the Creighton Blue Jay hurdles the kid.
Oh, wow.
Just hurdles, doesn't stop, just hurdles the kid. Because to be fair, like, that's probably the best thing you can do in that moment.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to stop, you're probably then going to run into the kid. The poor kid like gets up and finishes the race. Good for him. But yeah, the poor UNO bull was probably like, oh no. But he's straight up. But so to be fair, Union Omaha's owl did not get its inaugural race at the College World Series off to a truck and a kid.
And there's always next year.
Honestly, that good for UNO. Like, put them on the map.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I'm going to show you the video when we get done here. As always, we really appreciate you tuning in, you listening. Thank you to Austin for joining us this week. Yeah. You are awesome. Selfishly, again, I was familiar with you even before you were hired at Hurrdat, because I am a big Union Omaha fan. So on a selfish level, I'm a big fan of yours personally. So thank you for coming here and joining us.
Well, thank you both for having me. This was great.
We will be back next week, pending Sausha surviving the rest of the College World Series. If you get into, and just avoid the UNO bull, just avoid Durango.
You know what's funny is that I was actually downstairs when they were all walking out to the field, and I heard them before I saw them. I turned around and had to kind of like do a little jump back. So maybe I like just had a premonition and didn't realize
You knew. Stay away. Durango was at our wedding, and so was Herbie. And Durango and the Creighton Blue Jay, I'll just say this, those two are in shape. They're fit.
Yes.
So like watch, mind yourself.
Beware.
Mind yourself when you're around those mascots. But we will be back next week with even more. Feel free to email us, mindyourownpodcast @hailvarsity.com. You can tweet at us at Erin Sorensen, at Sausha72. Quick little plug. Be sure to check out what Sausha's up to right now. She is helping launch Hurrdat Sports, which has been amazing. She's been working very, very hard to bring you a lot of great content from the College World Series, but that won't be all. There will be plenty more to come. So be sure to check that out. See all of the work that they have been doing. You're crushing it.
Yeah. Tired. But there's only a few days a week. There's a week.
It'll be great.
Left.
And if you're in Omaha and you're listening to this in time, you can join us for the Hail Varsity Yearbook Release Party on Thursday, June 23rd at Hail Varsity Club between 4 and 8. It's going to be a great time. So lots going on. We'd love your support. But if you can't be there for any of it, just shoot us an email or tweet at us. We love to hear from you. As always, thank you.
Yeah. Be kind to each other.
Be kind to each other. Go follow Austin as well.
Yeah.
What is your Twitter? Do you tweet?
Not often. No.
You can go tweet at Austin though. Go find him and tweet at him anyway.
Don't read it.
I do favorites,
There you go. There we go. They're like hearts now.
Yeah, little hearts. Spreading the love. But I'm on Twitter a little bit. I don't really tweet myself, but I like retweeting event occasionally. So.
Perfect. So go find Austin.
Yeah.
Show him some love as well. Thank you again.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
We'll be back next week. Talk to you then.
Bye.
A Hurrdat Media Production.